Today we will be reading the final chapter of Stone Fox. Before we get started, let's look at questions to think about while reading. Number 1, what happens when the crowd sees Searchlight come into view on Main Street? Number 2, read this sentence from chapter 10. Searchlight forged ahead. What is the meaning of forged? And number 3, what do Stone Fox's actions at the end of the story tell us about his character? Chapter 10, The Finish Line. The crowd cheered madly when they saw little Willie come into view at the far end of Main Street, and even more madly when they saw that Stone Fox was right on his tail. Go, Searchlight, go. Searchlight forged ahead, but Stone Fox was gaining. So what's the meaning of forged ahead? Well, I can use my context clues in my clue word gaining. What does gaining mean? Gaining means that they're not in first place. So Stone Fox is still behind him in second place, but he is gaining on him. So Searchlight and little Willie are trying to get even further ahead. Go, Searchlight, go, little Willie cried out. Searchlight gave it everything she had. She was 100 feet from the finish line when her heart burst. She died instantly. There was no suffering. The sled and little Willie tumbled over her, slid along the snow for a while, then came to a stop about 10 feet from the finish line. It had started to snow. White snowflakes landed on Searchlight's dark fur as she lay motionless on the ground. The crowd became deadly silent. Lester's eyes looked to the ground. Miss Williams her hands over her mouth. Doc Smith started to run out to little Willie, but stopped. Mayor Smiley looked shocked and helpless, and so did Hank and Dusty, and so did the city slickers, and so did Clifford Snyder, the taxman. Stone Fox brought his sled to a stop alongside little Willie. He stood tall in the icy wind and looked down at the young challenger and the dog that lay limp in his arms. Is she dead, Mr. Stone Fox? Is she dead? Little Willie asked, looking up at Stone Fox with his one good eye. Stone Fox knelt down and put one massive hand on Searchlight's chest. He felt no heartbeat. He looked at little Willie, and the boy understood. Little Willie squeezed Searchlight with all his might. You did real good, girl, real good. I'm real proud of you. You just rest now, just rest. Little Willie began to brush the snow off Searchlight's back. No one spoke. No one moved. All eyes were on the Indian, the one called Stone Fox, the one who'd never lost a race and who now had another victory within his grasp. But Stone Fox did nothing. He just stood there like a mountain man. His eyes shifted to his own dogs, then to the finish line, then back to little Willie, holding Searchlight. With the heel of his moccasin, Stone Fox drew a long line in the snow. Then he walked back over to his sled and put out his rifle. Down at the end of Main Street, the other racers began to appear. As they approached, Stone Fox fired the rifle in the air. They came to a stop. Stone Fox spoke. No one crosses this finish line. And there wasn't anybody who didn't believe him. Stone Fox nodded to the boy. The town looked on in silence as little Willie, carrying a Searchlight, walked the last 10 feet across the finish line. So what did happen when the crowd sees Searchlight come into view on Main Street? Well, when the crowd saw Searchlight, they were cheering really loudly. What do Stone Fox's actions at the end of the story tell us about his character? Stone Fox tells no one that they can cross the finish line and lets little Willie cross the finish line before anybody else. So his actions tell us that he is compassionate towards little Willie and he understands that he should win so he doesn't lose his farmland like Stone Fox has lost his land. Go into the virtual classroom and complete the Kahoot challenge.